Good afternoon. How y'all doing?
Good.
Good. So I don't want to take a lot of time, but I have to make an introduction. Met Beck several years ago through the John Maxwell team. Her boss came the year before, and we got to be good friends. And so the following year, he introduced us, and just really, really good people. They run a youth organization in Australia that is just amazing. They are focusing on kids between the ages of 12 and 25 that are troubled for any number of reasons, and she can tell us more about that. But the thing that drew me to them is their passion for what it is that they do, and the way that they go after it. I mean, it's just amazing. So we have developed a friendship. We've talked about doing different things. They've used my book and done book studies and a lot of other things over the years. And then about a month and a half ago, they contacted us, and I didn't get it. I didn't get it at all. They just said, Beck's going to be doing some marathons, and then she's going to end up in Miami. And when she's done in Miami, could she come up and hang out with you guys for a couple of days? And we're like, sure, that sounds like a good idea. So yeah, let's do that. But here's the deal. It wasn't just some marathons. So you probably have all heard, but let me just say for the record, she ran 7 full marathons in 7 days on 7 continents. And so I want to read you this for me. So I mean, it's just amazing, and it just takes a little bit for that to sink in. And I contacted a friend of mine because I wanted, I want people to get to know Beck, and you'll know this name. I contacted a buddy by the name of James Crocker, and I told him what I just told you, and oops, wrong text here, and he came back. Well, I don't want to take the time, but James said, I don't want to burst your bubble, but I've been doing some math. That's not possible. He thinks I'm telling him I want to introduce him to somebody that's getting ready to go do this thing. And he's telling me, look, it's just 23 hours from here to Australia alone, and that's just one run. There's no way this is possible. I said, hey, I hate to burst your bubble, but she's already done it. She has done it. And so when she showed up at our place, I expected her to show up on a stretcher or just to be totally wrecked. And it's amazing. So without any further ado, let's make welcome Beck Mitchell from Australia.
Firstly, I just wanted to say thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak today. It's been a whirlwind of an adventure, and I'm still trying to figure out what country I am in and what day it is and what time it is, and it's just been so fantastic to be able to hang out with Scott and Catherine for a couple of days and try and recover from the experience. And there are thousands and thousands of stories and things that I've learned in 168 hours of my life that I would love to be able to share today, but the truth of the matter is we don't have enough days in the year for all of the stories. So what I've tried to do is put together some pictures, and I've got some medals to show, and just tried to think about some stories that really impacted me while I was in the midst of this crazy experience. And I'm sure there's things that have happened that I probably have forgotten, to be honest, and over the next year or two they'll start to kind of evolve, and I'll remember, some more learnings from the experience. But I've just chosen a few today. But before I share, I just wanted to say thanks to Catherine and Scott again for hosting me. It's been wonderful to turn up in a foreign country with people that I don't know, and go to a place that have just been so caring, and they've looked after me, and they've just made me feel like I'm at home in a place that is definitely not my home. So I feel like I now have a second family halfway around the planet. So thank you so much for those guys. They've been amazing. Just to give you some context of what Scott was saying around Bridge Builders Youth Organisation, which is the logo on the screen, and a little bit of the reason why I even chose to do something crazy ridiculous in the first place, is that my growing up was a little unconventional. When I was younger, I grew up on a farm. They took me out onto their farm this week, and I was totally in my element with all the cows and all the chickens. And I have 2 parents and an older sister and a twin brother. I'm a twin as well. And we grew up on this farm in a tiny little town called Mount Evelyn, on the outskirts of the suburbs in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne in Australia. And it's tiny, there's like not that many people there, and it's not very well known. People say where you're from and you say Mount Evelyn, people were like, where? Where even is that? And my parents were very unconventional in the way that they kind of raised us. So one of the major impacts of my earlier years was that we didn't go to primary school, like we just didn't go to school. Formal education for us was something that didn't happen. So instead of learning how to read and write and do maths and speak and do all of the foundational things any young person would need to learn at that age, I was on a farm taking care of chickens and washing eggs and riding horses and building fences and doing all of the things that people do on farm life. And it wasn't until I was about 11 years old that I finally experienced, I guess, some kind of sense of formal education. And I was thrust into the kind of top of primary school, which is like our kind of, I don't know how it is for you guys, your school system's a little different here, but it was sort of like the top of junior school for me. And I was 11 years old and I didn't know how to write my own name. And that was when I kind of realized I was in a bit of a challenging spot. And over the course of the next sort of 3 or 4 years, as I began to, I guess, be a teenager, I had a lot to work out, you know, not just who I was and how I fit in this world, but how do I write? How do I do maths? How do I catch up? The 6 years that I missed with all of the peers around me that seemed to always know what they were doing and understand things. And I guess I felt incredibly left behind, like I just didn't get on the bus somehow, like I just never made it. And I sort of lived in this like isolated bubble of a farm that really created a deficit in not only my skill, but my self-confidence and my ability to interact with other people. Like, as you can imagine, you know, what were you doing when you were 11? You were probably at school like everybody else, but not me. My siblings didn't go to school either. So in that real teenage life, I found myself really getting into trouble, going down the wrong pathway. I had no clue who I was, how I fit into this world. Nothing made sense. You know, I couldn't even make a friend. I didn't know how to talk to people. It's such a basic thing. You know, people ask me these days, when you have kids, are you going to send your kids to school? And the only reason I say yes is because the education is one part of it, but the social aspect is such an important part, and I just completely miss that. So even today at 31, like social cues, I just miss them sometimes. I'm like, it just goes straight over my head. And I basically found myself in a really challenging situation when I was about 17 years old. I was about to finish the last year of high school, and I just started doing really silly behaviors. Alcohol and boys looked exciting. I was really suffering with my self-image, so I went through an eating disorder. I nearly lost my life to that, and I was just not in a good space. I didn't have peer influence that was positive, and I didn't have parents or kind of mentors to say, what you're doing isn't a good pathway, and if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to end up in I was already in a pretty bad space, but it was obviously going to get worse. And a student wellbeing coordinator at my school actually said, why don't you go to Bridge Builders? I was like, what's that? And they said, well, it's a program that can help fix your behaviors. Okay, that's great. That's a really good incentive. Fate would have it that I would think about that for a few days, and I turned up at Bridge Builders as a scruffy little, come on in.
I'm so sorry, can
No,
I jump in?
absolutely, yeah, come on in. I turned up at
Any
any seat you like.
Okay.
I turned up at Bridge Builders when I was 17, and obviously in a really challenging space, and for the first time in my entire life, I found a group of people and a place where I was of value. You know, people would actually say to me that my life was worth it, you know, that you were of value. They said things like, I believe in you. I'd never heard those words in my life. I believe in you. The power of our words, I think you were saying before, the importance of words. I talk about the power of words because we have such an ability with our words to make a difference. And I imagine all the time what it would have been like if that student wellbeing coordinator hadn't have suggested for me to go to Bridge Builders, because it transformed my life. I eventually was mentored and was given opportunity to develop myself and not make up for what I missed out on, but just that personal growth journey of figuring out who I was and my value as a person. And about 4 or 5 years after I started, I began to realize that once I sort my stuff out, I'll be in a position to help other people do the same thing, which is what landed me at the JMT in Florida. One of our business partners of the youth organization, it's a non-for-profit, one of the donors, I guess, they paid for me to go. They just turned up one day and said, you've been working a lot on your own, personal journey, and we really believe in you, and we want you to go to Florida, and we want you to experience the John Maxwell training, because you're working hard to help other people, and we want to empower that. And I was like, you're going to pay for me to travel like across the world? I couldn't believe it. I was like, an opportunity for me. And I did. I turned up, I did the training, and I've done many things. Come on in, darling. It's all good. I've done many things over the course of the last 15 years that I've been at Bridge Builders, working on me to get me to a place where I can help other people. And at the end of the day, that's why I chose to do something crazy like the World Marathon Challenge. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a place in LA called the Dream Center. Yes. Someone, okay, good. Fellow Dream Center people in the room, excellent. Pastor Tommy Barnett started that years ago, it would be 25, 30 years, I'm sure. And Matthew Barnett, his son, actually did the same event in 2017. And all the way from Australia, I watched his journey on Instagram and all the training and everything he was doing. And he did it as a fundraiser for this Dream Center, this community organization. And my first thought when I saw his journey was, who is crazy enough to do that? What on earth is he thinking? And then 5 minutes later, I thought, maybe I could do that.
Wow.
Literally in the same moment. I was like, it seems crazy, but here is a guy halfway across the planet doing something that's making a difference for an organization. And I had such a heart to bring more awareness and finances to an organization making a difference for people like me, like the way that I felt. So I thought maybe this is worth it. So I'd love to share a little bit about the logistics first. Scott mentioned the logistics. It is possible, by the way. I've done it. I can tell you it's possible. So I'll show you a couple of pictures and just share some stories and have a bit of fun. And if we've got some time, which I hope we do, we'll just do some Q&A at the end, because I'm sure you'll have questions. What is the World Marathon Challenge? It is running 7 marathons. Does anyone know how long a marathon is? 26.2 miles. Don't forget the 0.2. That's important.
Times that by 7.
Yep. It is 26.2 miles, and we ran 7 of those on the 7 different continents in 168 hours, including flight time. Yeah. Wow. That's what I said when I first found out. So the plan is you start in the Antarctic, of course. Where else would you want to start? Because of the weather unpredictability. You can't predict the weather there very well. So we try and have a window of about 12 hours where we fly in, race, and fly out. So you can get in and race without being blown off the continent, and get out, because that's another trick as well. One of the World Marathon Challenge years, they were stuck in the Antarctic for 3 days, just doing nothing because they couldn't fly out. The plane could not get off the runway. So we start there, and then we go back to Cape Town. So we actually started in Cape Town with all our pre-race briefing, flew down to the Antarctic, back to Cape Town for number 2, which is a beautiful place in the world. If you've ever been there, you'll know what I'm talking about. Then we skip across the ocean to Perth in Australia for number 3, up to Dubai in Asia for number 4, and then across to Madrid in Europe. We actually ran on a Formula 1 track in Madrid. Very cool experience. I'll show you a photo in a little bit. We were actually supposed to run the South American continent in Chile, in Santiago in Chile, but there was a bit of political unrest, so they just moved us up into Fortaleza in Brazil. And then we finished in South Beach, which is a pretty cool place to finish, if I don't say so myself. So that just gives you a bit of an indication of, across the world map, the logistics of what they plan. The international timeline sits here, so we didn't cross the timeline once, which is virtually impossible to do. If you cross the timeline, it's virtually impossible to do the 168 hours. So we kind of have to avoid that, and when we sort of fly towards Australia, we lose time, but then the rest of it we make time as we fly. So that's the logistics of it all. Global Running Adventures run the whole thing. My job was to turn up and survive. Yeah? One of the lessons that I learned right at the start was in the pre-race briefing, which looked a little like this. The race director's up the front of the room and he's sharing about this is what you've got yourself into. He said, this week you're going to have to be flexible. And I didn't really take that in. I didn't really take that in because I was like, yeah, cool, no worries, you're in control, whatever, it'll work. And we were meant to fly into the Antarctic at 5 a.m. on the morning of the 6th of February. And the night before, he says to us, get ready, we're going early. Okay. So at 5 p.m. the night before, we got our bags together, we left our checked luggage at the hotels, we got on a bus, we went to the airport, we checked our bags in, they put the bags on the plane, and then an hour later of sitting around after a delay, the pilot says, it's too bad in Antarctica, we're not flying tonight. Okay, so we get all our bags off the plane, go back to the hotel, race director says you'll get an email at 10 o'clock next morning telling you what the plan is. So we're just sitting around at a hotel for a night waiting for instructions. We get the email at 10 a.m. and he says, we still don't know because the weather's too marginal, we're not sure if we can do this. Check your emails again at 2 p.m. Sitting around, waiting, getting anxious, being like, is this thing ever gonna happen? 2 o'clock comes and he says, good news, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. we're flying to the Antarctic. We all got really excited, and then just underneath that in the email it says, but get ready because you're about to run in Cape Town tonight at 7 o'clock. We went, what? No, we're not supposed to start in Cape Town. We're supposed to start in the Antarctic. And he's like, well, this is what we have to do. This is the window for the Antarctic. So we're starting tonight, we're flying down tomorrow, and then we fly back. The other thing he failed to tell us was this. We were meant to fly down in a business class chartered plane, and this is what we ended up in. This is a Russian cargo plane that looks like it was built in the 1920s, right? The seats are like metal, and you're flying sideways. I don't know if you can see that. We did this for takeoff and landing. By the way, those penguin boxes, they're the amenities. And then we laid on the floor because we only had 5.5 hours between Cape Town and Antarctic, and it was the middle of the night and we wanted to sleep. So all of those people on the side, we just took up whatever room we could find on the floor and we tried to get some sleep. We had earplugs in to try and block out the noise of the engine that plane made. It was a different experience, but it taught me a lot about being flexible, because in that moment I could have become very frustrated that the Antarctic was meant to be first, and why am I running in the heat? It's supposed to be cold, and this is not what we'd planned for, and I've flown halfway across the world and waited an extra 48 hours and nothing's going according to plan. And I could have got frustrated, but I didn't. I just smiled and said, we're starting, yay! Which is good. This is what the Antarctic looked like when we first got there. Anyone in the room ever been to the Antarctic? That's what it looks like. That's actually some of our competitors getting off our crazy Russian plane, heading across to shipping containers, which is all that there is. There's about 8 of them, and they're the entire accommodation of this Russian base called Novo. It's actually called something else, but I can't pronounce it, so we'll just go with Novo. The things that I overcame in the Antarctic. I don't know if I could truly put enough words around my experience there, but I'm going to try. This is what we ran in. So it was minus 13 Fahrenheit to start with, and the wind they described as gale force. Now I don't know what that converts to in miles per hour, but it was cold and it was windy. That's me on the left-hand side with my green top on. And that's my buddy Linda on the right in the red. And that's actually us walking. We're not running at that point. The photographer was like, come on, run. I'm like, not happening. The track that we ran so they didn't lose us and no one died was a circle around the airport. So they landed the plane and we ran around it. So they had 2 long sides and 2 short sides. It was about, let's say, 2 miles loop. One aid station, which was a tent to protect you from the wind. And what we ended up doing was we ran our first lap and we realized we had to change strategies. We had to run away from the wind down one long side, so it was actually helpful because it was pushing you when we got to run. And then you'd sort of come around the bottom and then you'd come back the other way, and the wind was so strong we literally couldn't run. Like I can't describe the feeling of trying to run and it just slowing us to the point of walking. So we kind of decided there's no point. We're going to lose energy. We're going to be out here too long. Let's just let's just change strategy. We're going to run as fast as we can on one side. We're going to walk as fast as we can on the other. It took a total of 7 hours and 7 minutes for me to get that done. And I was sharing with Scott and Catherine 1,000 stories throughout the last couple of days. And one of the things that I remember saying as I relived the moment was that it was really cold and we were in the huts getting ready. And I'd put all of the layers that I'd brought for the Antarctic on my body in every shape and form. I had balaclavas and everything. And I remember getting outside and they walked us a couple hundred meters down to the start line. And between the accommodation building and the start line, I'd already given up. I thought to myself, this is too cold and it's not worth my life. And I sat there for a moment, well, I stood there for a moment because there was no way I was sitting. I stood there for a moment and the race director was giving his 2-minute pre-race briefing telling us how many loops he could do, and it didn't matter what he was saying. To me, I was done. I was about to turn around, walk back to the accommodation building and sit and warm for the next 4 hours. I was just going to sit there. I'd race number 2. And I was at the point where I thought, I'm done. I can't do this. This is too cold. It's too harsh. I'm not dying here. That's what I thought. And Scott asked me, he said, what made you start the race? And I said, well, the race director said go, so we did. So we just started running. It was like, do what Simon says. So he said go. So I went, okay. So I started running. But honestly, I have to tell you, for 7 hours and 7 minutes, I felt like stopping. Every single step of that race was excruciating. I was freezing the whole time. We had the opportunity to stop on every lap and go to the aid station, and it got so cold that what I recognized is when I stopped, funny moment, you guys drink Coca-Cola soda, yeah? I'm pouring it into a polystyrene cup and it's freezing as I pour it. So I couldn't even drink it. I was like, this is not working. Wow. And after that, I walked out of the tent to start to run and realized that stopping to eat and drink was making me too cold. And I didn't have the body heat to heat up again by the time I got back around to the station. So I was actually in this process of every time I stopped, I was getting colder and colder and colder and more miserable. And at that point, I had to make a survival instinct decision between, do I eat and drink or do I survive and stay warm? Like that was, when I realized that was huge for me. Lucky I had my buddy Linda, and she was an absolute trooper, and we just stuck out there. We are not letting Antarctic beat us. And we didn't. We crossed the finish line after 7 hours and 7 minutes of just... The thing that I learned from that is that your body can do whatever your mind asks of it. So many times my body was like, I am out, I am freezing, your toes are gonna fall off, you're gonna get frostbite, you're gonna die out here. And my brain just said, you are here to run, and you are here to finish this. And the whole time it was this battle between body and my mind overcame it. So if you ever feel like you're in a situation where your body's giving up on you, up here is so much stronger and so much more powerful than what your body will ever be. And your mind will always win. You have to choose it, like I did over and over again, like thousands of times in 7 hours, but you have to choose that. My body just followed suit, and it was at the mercy of what my mind was determined to do. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the person, Eliud Kipchoge. He's the first person on the planet to run a sub 2 hour marathon. Extremely amazing. He basically runs 4 minute 35 per mile pace for 2 hours. Incredible. And his entire campaign when he went to he only just achieved that a couple of months ago, when his campaign was that no human is limited. And he was set out on sub 2 because he wanted to prove, everyone said it was impossible, can't be done, much like Scott's mate that says, that's impossible. People were saying it's impossible to do, and he just went, you know what, I'm gonna go out and prove everybody wrong. No human is limited. And I experienced that in the Antarctic. This is Cape Town. This is my buddy Linda. Cape Town was amazing. I just wanted to put this photo in there because you'll consistently see throughout a lot of the marathons that this Linda lady is standing next to me. But what I want you to know about Linda is that she's nearly 60. This is the second time in 2 years that she's done the World Marathon Challenge, and she's got type 1 diabetes, just to make it harder. Yeah? You're getting the image of who Linda is? And she's running with me. I feel humbled that she ran with me so much. This is Marathon Barbie. I want to point out Marathon Barbie because she's amazing. She's from San Diego and she makes prosthetic limbs for a living. She was my seatmate, so we were on this plane and you got to sit next to the same person throughout the whole experience, which was amazing because we really got to know one another. We called her Marathon Barbie because every time we landed the plane before we ran, she was putting on her makeup. And I kept saying to her, honey, 5 minutes after the race starts, it's all sweating off. At least I'll look good for the starting photos. And I was like, oh, you're so cute. But the thing I wanted to highlight about, I could keep calling her Marathon Barbie, her name's Susie. What I wanted to highlight about Susie is that she was the only person out of 35 people on that plane doing the half marathon. So all of us were there to do the full. She was the only one there to do the half. What do you think she thought about that?
I felt inferior.
Oh.
Yep, left behind.
100%. She turned to me like race 2 after the Antarctic, maybe even race 3. It was a whirlwind. And she just said to me, everybody else here is elite and I'm just a mom. What? Are you kidding me? You're on the same plane, honey. You just ran in the Antarctic. And you spent not the same amount of time, but you had to stay out there and you had to achieve. You're in the same conditions we are. She says, yeah, but I'm just doing the half. I said, but you're here and you're on the plane and you're in this experience. We're doing it together. I don't care whether you're doing 5Ks or 50. You're out here and you're doing it. And we got the chance to chat a bit about that. And I guess I wanted to highlight that because I know that in life I've compared myself to other people a lot, and I know that that's what we do. But when we compare ourselves to other people, everybody loses. Everybody loses, because I can compare myself to someone who's better than me and then they'll compare themselves to somebody else, and no one wins with comparison. So if you ever get in a situation where you're kind of like Marathon Barbie and you're comparing yourself to other people, just remember how far you've come, because I had to remind her of that during the week. I had to say, you have to understand how far you've come to get here. There are only 174 people that have ever done what we've just done, and you're one of those 174. This is Linda, again. This is in Perth, and what I wanted to highlight out of Perth is the power of partnership. I don't know if you've ever done something in partnership with someone else, in a teammate maybe, or in a pair, but Linda was amazing. You know, we would run along together and her pump would start beeping at her to say that she's running low on sugar. And I'm, Linda, you're beeping. She'd have to run and take lollies while she's running. She was extraordinary. She never stopped. She was like a steam train. And the thing that I wanted to highlight about Perth is this. It's my home country. I'd been through the Antarctic, right? So that was an experience like no other. And I thought if I survive that, everything else will be easy, right? Wrong. I got to wear my home colours, which was exciting. And I thought, this is going to be the best one. I put all this expectation out there and I thought, I'm going to run Australia with everything I've got. And we picked a pace and we sat at that pace, and for the first 21Ks, everything went according to plan. Everyone was cheering and we were doing really well, and you can see us smiling, right? We're happy. It's great. 21Ks in, my muscles just stopped working. They just said, you've already put us through a lot and we are done. They weren't cramping. They were just excruciatingly tight and sore, and it was making me want to walk. And Linda says, what's wrong? I said, I'm tired. She goes, keep going. And I was like, okay. And I ran next to Linda for another 21Ks. It took us 2 hours to do the first half, and it took us 3 hours to do the second half. So you can understand the struggle I was in the second half. But the thing that I want to highlight is that I don't think I would have finished that race without it. Sometimes in life we can try and do something on our own and it doesn't work. We do something with someone else, and all of a sudden the power of two becomes so much more than the power of one. And I am so thankful that I met Linda and that she didn't leave me behind. She could have just ran off, honestly. She could have just kept going. She's so much faster than I am. She's like twice my age and got diabetes, and she's faster than me. And I was like, just keep going. I felt like a burden. I was like, I'm holding you back. So just go. And she's like, I am not leaving you, so you better get running. I'm like, okay. I think I cried like 7 times in the end of that race. Like I just kept crying. And she's like, if you're crying, you're running. I'm like, okay. Honestly, she was the best thing that happened to me. So I wanted to highlight the power of partnership. I wanted to tell a story about one of the other participants, because there's lots of things that I learnt, but I met some incredible people. And I had done the first 4 marathons, not really getting to know anyone else apart from Linda, who I was running with, and and Marathon Barbie, who I was sitting with, because they were the two, like literally all we did for 7 days was sit in an airport, fly on a plane and run. That was it. So I got to get to know the people that were with me for those things. And to the end of, we're in now Dubai. So we finished Perth, we go to Dubai. The first half of that race went really well. And in the second half, I thought, you know what, there's still a lot to go. We're just going to pull the pace back a bit. And I ended up walking a part of the race with this guy, Jonathan, and another girl, Jen. And we just decided we were going to let our bodies rest for a bit. We had the time, we'd give ourselves some more energy because we were still predicting there's another 3 marathons to go at this point. And this is Jonathan and his bear, Ollie. And what I loved about his story is that he just began to share as we were walking. He has like a stomach challenge from when he was a kid, and he has an ileostomy bag. And the bear is his organisation's mascot, really. And every lap of the last lap of every marathon, he picks up this bear and he runs with it for the last lap, so that when he crosses the finish line, he can cross the finish line with the bear, and he knows that they're going to take a photo of him. And I said, what's with the bear? Tell me more about the story. And he shared his story. And the powerful moment was when he said, I'm crossing the line with the bear so that every kid around the planet that has the same condition I have knows that it won't stop them. They're the kind of people I met last week, right? And I thought to myself, how well do I know the people that I'm running with at that point? You know, now I've worked in teams, and sometimes I don't take the time to ask someone how they're doing, what's their story, where are they at? And I wonder if you have a team maybe that you're part of today that you could ask yourself that question, how well do I know my team? Because as soon as I knew that about him, all of a sudden I wanted to encourage him. I wanted to get around him. I wanted to, tell him how amazing he was. And then all of a sudden, both of us were running better, and we were better for it. And he did the same for me. We kind of shared stories, and I just thought he was a superstar, and I wanted to share about him because he's awesome. And Ollie, his little bear, travelled the world. He's probably the first bear to be on 7 continents in 7 days. This is Madrid. So we're on a Formula 1 track. I honestly felt like I was a race car. I wanted to put a cardboard box on and just run around going. I was probably delirious enough at the time to try it. This is Jen. Jen was running for the Boston Children's Hospital. She has a young daughter with cerebral palsy. And it was really cold. I don't know if you're getting the cold theme, but like Cape Town was warm, but it was at night time. The Antarctic was absolutely freezing. The way that it meant, the way that we did the charter meant that the first 4 marathons were either at night time or cold. So Perth was at night time, so that was cold. And then Madrid, Dubai was at night time, and Madrid, 5 of the 7 were at night. So we don't get the luxury of time zones. We turn up and we run. So sometimes we would be turning up at 11 o'clock at night, and we would start at midnight local time and just start running through the night. Other times we'd turn up at 3 a.m. and we'd start at 4, and we'd just, like, time was irrelevant to us. I never knew what day it was, what country I was in. All I did was just get off a plane and run. That was kind of what we were doing. So we turned up at Madrid. It was freezing, which is why I got long sleeves on. And I ran with Jen. But the thing was, we were getting really tired at this point. Obviously, 5 marathons in a very short space of time. And we had a discussion. The 2 of us got together and thought, how are we going to approach this? I'd just spent some time with her in Dubai. And we thought, what are we going to do? And we realized that the Formula 1 track obviously, has a bit of a really cool circuit to it. But there's always those little hills in a Formula 1 track, and then like the little downhills, and then a lot of it's flat. And we came up with the strategy of, let's walk the hills and run everything else. Kind of seemed like a good idea. And right at the start of the race, we're talking through this strategy, and our lovely race director, Richard, comes over and announces to us all that we're behind schedule. Says, normally you've got 8 hours, and tonight you've got 6. Okay, could have you said that for the first marathon, mate? It's like, at this point we're really sore, and my feet hurt, and I'm exhausted. Like, okay, and so we talked about this strategy, and what I realized is that having a strategy is better than no strategy. Whether it's good, great, or indifferent, even if it's a partial strategy, it's better than not having one. Because sometimes I went out there and I just had a crack. But when we got together and we made a plan, we looked at the markings on the side of the track where the cars would kind of go off the side of the road, and we said, at the blue mark, we run. And then we got to the top, get to the bottom of the hill, and at that yellow mark, we walk. And we let ourselves walk. And then when we get to the next, at the blue one, we run. And we were reminding each other the whole time, Well, like, that's the line. We're supposed to be running. She's like, I can't be bothered. I'm like, we have to run. Like, it says run on there. Just pretend it says run. And then at other points, we would have to hold ourselves back. You know, we were cold and we wanted to run. She's saying, no, we need to walk. We need to rest. This is our rest bit, because otherwise we're going to get back around the other side and we're going to be too tired. We had 6 hours to get that race done, and guess what our time was? 5 hours and 58 minutes and 10 seconds.
Wow.
So having a good strategy is better than not having one. And I'm so thankful that we got together that day, and she was not Linda. Linda was off in front of us somewhere. And there was lots of people that came close to that 6 hour mark, but all of us made it. And I loved the strategy that we had, and we implemented it, and we got to run on a Formula One track, which is pretty freaking cool. I love this photo. The first time we had some sunshine. I was so excited. Australian summer is very warm. I'm like a beach lover. I love sitting on the sand. Like South Beach for me was like heaven. And these are two of the other fellow competitors, both Americans. In the middle, you've got Kerry. She's from New Jersey. Is that right? Yeah, New Jersey, right, cool. And then Alicia's on the right-hand side. She's all the way over the other side in the west somewhere. Can't remember. It's been a long week. And that's me. We were in Marathon 6. We landed at the wrong time, like the schedule just went out the window. And we ended up running or starting at midday in Brazil. So we're talking like 36 degrees Celsius, which is hot. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's hot. And it's the middle of the day. And we're running on some footpath surrounded by like a gazillion tourists, yeah? That was not good. And obviously we're starting to take our shirts off at this point because it's really hot. And I said to these three girls, what's our plan for the day? What are we going to do here? And Alicia had an ankle injury, Kerry had a knee injury, and I was exhausted. One of the other things that I did on my right toe in Antarctica was that I got wet socks, and then I got blisters, and my right big toe got really swollen, and it actually started pushing my toenail off. So I'm running the rest of those marathons with like an infected toe, and the doctor said, you probably should stop running or we might have to amputate it. And I was like, well, I'm not going to stop running, so we'll just have to figure it out. So by the time I got here, I basically didn't have a toe left. So we were in a lot of pain, and we were desperate to finish, so we thought, how are we going to do this? So we just thought, you know what, it's hot, we're exhausted, let's just get out there and start. So we just walked the first half of this race. It's not optimal, it's definitely not optimal, but it's what we chose to do. And we got halfway through, and I said to the girls, we're not going to make the time. It was taking us too long. We were injured, we were hobbling, it was taking too long. And I said to the girls, I wonder if we could run. Kerry looks at me and she's like, are you kidding me? And Alicia looked like she was going to kill me. I said, let's just do what we can. We've done it as a team to this point. We're all going to have different pain levels, so let's just try and give it everything that we've got. We kind of ran off on one another. It wasn't the best scenario, but we just found something, and we just gave it everything that we have. So what ended up happening was I was just in front of Alicia, and then Alicia was just in front of Kerry, and the three of us finished probably within a half an hour space. But the fact was we finished, right? And the race director at the end said, what happened to you guys? Like, you were so slow. I'm like, thank you so much, I appreciate that. You were so slow. And he said, you just, like, all of you just started running out of nowhere. He's like, what happened? And I said, we just got this, like, fire in our belly to just go for it. He's like, well, can you do that in the next one? And I thought, what actually happened? And I realized what we did was we all three of us lent into our strength, and that lit a fire that we didn't know we had. So I said to the girls, just think about happy thoughts. And I thought about the fact that I was here and not in the Antarctic. And honestly, that's what spurred me on. I thought, I love the heat. I've trained in the heat. The heat's my friend. I'm here in 35 degrees. Let's do this. And I just took off. And Alicia did the same thing. She thought about something, and Kerry thought about something. All three of us, we just lent into our strength zone, and that just kind of lit a fire of, we can do this. And we all came across the line within about 2 hours of that decision. We just got it done, even though we were in agony, and Kerry was crying her face off, and she was doing what I was doing. She was crying and running, We just didn't stop. Actually, at one point, Kerry did stop. She kind of just sat on the ground and cried, and I was like, oh, I feel ya. Let's keep going. So maybe there's times in your life where you don't feel like you're getting it right, and you have to remember to lean into your strength, because that's where your fire is, that's where your passion is, that's where your drive comes from, is in your strength zone. If you're doing something that you're not purposed for, you're not created for, you don't have the passion for, then it's kind of just like, meh. And I hate walking. I'm not a walker. I'm like, I want to run. So I had to think about something that made sense to me, and heat was what it was. For this next one, I'm just going to show you guys. So these are the medals that we got. So basically what they did is, we did 7 marathons, right? So for every marathon we finished, we got a medal, which was kind of nice. Every medal had the name of the continent on it, and like a little picture of the continent. So when we finished the first one in South Africa, in Cape Town, they gave us this medal, right? So I'm just going to put that on. So imagine I've done Cape Town, yay! Now we're on a Russian cargo plane. We're on the way to the Antarctic, and then I got the one that, now this one, that one's worth a lot to me because I sacrificed a lot to get it. But that's number 2. And so this is happening throughout the week, right? They're giving us our medals as we cross the finish line. There's a reason why I'm putting all of these on. They are heavy, but so Australia's the same. Cross the finish line in Perth, and I'm just going to keep putting these on. And then we had Asia, so of course we went to Dubai. And at this point, I'm actually walking through the airports with all these on. And they bling and they bounce around, and I didn't care. I was like, yeah, I have these. And people are like, what are the medals for? I'm like, I'm running around the world. It made me feel better. And then South America was Brazil. So I finished the hot one. And this is where it gets really interesting, right? So I've just done 6 marathons on 6 continents, including Antarctica, in 6 days. And we finished in Brazil. And our race director, he so lovingly just says things at times that we go, thanks so much, Richard. He says, between now and the finish of your marathon in Miami, we haven't even left Brazil. He says, you have 18 hours. Mate, way to be encouraging. I was like, are you kidding me? We're not going to make it. So we get on a bus from the hotel, and the hotel just held luggage, and we didn't stay there. Got on a bus, had a police escort back to the airport, stayed in the airport way longer than what we should have, as in like trying to get all the bags sorted. Took this 5-hour or 6-hour flight from Brazil to Miami, and when we landed and got out of the airport, we were on the bus on the way to Miami, and it was like 5 a.m. in the morning. And this guy locally here in Miami in South Beach gets on the bus and he says, welcome to Miami! Everyone's like, we're so not excited to be here. We have to run another marathon. We just finished one 12 hours ago, buddy. And Richard gets on the bus and he says, you've got until 10 past 12 today to finish, everyone, right? At this point, most of us are doing okay. We had one guy who was winning the whole thing, busted his ankle in Brazil, and was going to be a non-starter for the final marathon. If that's not a lesson in endurance, I don't know what is. I remember my boss, before I left Australia, saying to me, this is not a race. This is a training run. Do not stuff up the first 6 because you got to make that 7th. And the poor guy was winning the whole thing. He was doing sub 3-hour marathons. Busted his ankle, non-starter in Miami. We were all gutted for him. This other guy did his knee towards the end of Brazil, and they put a splint on the side of the knee, wrapped it up, stuck him in a wheelchair to the airport. When we got off at South Beach, gave him a pair of crutches and said, off you go. The guy starts hobbling his last marathon. He's ran every single one of them, and he's hobbling through the last one with crutches and a splint on his knee. And I was like, man, I think we're all crazy. Anyway, we get off this bus, and there's all these family and friends from all over America meeting all their people. And Richard says, "Right, we've got to get going." The final deadline was like 7 hours and 10 minutes away, so we get started in this final marathon. And I don't really know what was going through my mind for most of that marathon. We started in the early morning, so it was nice and dark and cool. And then as the sun came up in South Beach, it got really hot again. And I was just kind of trying to cruise. I wanted to get in under the time, of course, but at the same time, I realized this was the last one. You know, there's not another one I have to do after this. So I thought to myself, like, I want to enjoy this. Like, I'm in South Beach. Yeah, this is cool. I want to kind of enjoy this. So I took my time a little bit because I was already exhausted. And I just started to think about, like, all of the things that I've accomplished throughout the week, all of the people that I've met, all the things that I learned. But more so, what I started to think about was the 3 medals that I would get at the end, right? So they give us our South Beach medal, right? Which is cool. I'm not going to put the other 2 on for a second. I'm just going to show you. But then we get this one that says you've done the whole thing, right? The only way you can get that one is that if you have all of these ones. So there was a whole bunch of people in the Antarctic that they didn't make it. They couldn't finish because of how challenging the conditions were. There were people that pulled out along the way due to injury, and they weren't getting this bad boy. But I was, and I was excited about that. And it was no disrespect to anyone else, but it was my journey and the things that I'd given up to get here. And I started thinking about that, and I thought, oh, I get 2, not just 2, I get 3. This special guy here, this is a very unique, exclusive medal, and 174 people on the planet have this medal. And they're the people that have done 7 marathons on 7 continents in the 7 days. There are quite a few people that have done 7 marathons on 7 continents, but they have not done it in 168 hours. And I knew that when I crossed the finish line, I was getting 3 medals, and that was kind of exciting at that point. But the thing that I loved the most about trying to get myself through the last marathon was that I started thinking about all of the sacrifice that I'd made over 2 years to get here. You know? And sometimes in those 2 years, that big goal felt so far away. And it felt like the sacrifices I was making weren't worth it. You know, I had to give up so much, the time, the effort, the energy. There were days where I had to just run in the rain for hours. In Melbourne, crappy weather. I'd rather be at home watching movies. And I decided to do things like give up alcohol for 12 months, before the challenge. I like a drink. Drinking's not necessarily the most important thing, but I chose, it's not conducive to marathon running though. So I chose, social occasions for 12 months. I just chose small things. But all of those small things were about to mean something. And for 2 years I had looked forward to that moment, but it was here. And for 5 hours and 53 minutes, I thought about that. I thought about the 3 medals at the end, but I thought about all of the sacrifice me and people that know me and that in my circle had given up for me to get there. And I wonder if you've had situations where you feel like your goal's too far away. Because for me, that was so real. I'm not going to get the money. I'm not going to have the sponsorship. I'm not going to be fast enough. I'm not going to make the finish line. My body's going to get injured beforehand or on the trip. Like that final finish line just felt like a big, hairy, audacious goal that I was never going to make. But it was all those little sacrifices along the way that all of a sudden just put a smile on my face. Didn't matter how much pain I was in. So I crossed the finish line. I got my 3 medals. And that's what I looked like at the end. That was literally 2 minutes after the finish. And I put on all my medals. Well, those 3. They gave me 3 medals. And the only thing I knew to do was just put my hands up and say yay. Didn't know what else to do at that point. And I'd finally made it. That one goal that I'd been working to for so long, I finally made it. I'm going to take these off because they're super heavy. Feel free to come and have a look at them at any point. Please don't take them because they took a lot to earn. No, I'm not selling them on eBay. I've been around the Maxwell team for quite a while. And one of the things I love that John talks about is you've got to give up to go up. And I had to give up a lot, but I got to experience the reward of that. One of the things that I want to point out that goes back to my reason why.
Beck, are you going to come back to that picture because you've got some names?
You mean that one? You're speaking my language. Like I said at the start, that there was a reason why I was there, and in amongst all of the the toe that was trying to fall off and the muscles that didn't want to work and the Linda that was yelling at me. All of the like, I literally thought I was going to die in the Antarctic. All of that I went through. I had the opportunity to be inspired by a list of names on my arms. And I wanted to show you this picture because I feel like it's so important. On the right-hand side, your left, I decided that for every race I would do, I would honour a person that's influenced my life. Whether that's a friend, a mentor, a work colleague, somebody that has had a big influence on who I am today, because I was not in a good space and there has been a lot of people that have helped me become who I am today. So I wanted to honour that. So every race I started, I did a video and I said the race that I'd like to, honour the person. And so on your left, I know that that's in Madrid, so all the names aren't there. they did eventually make it. That's a list of people there's 2 families on that list that have I wouldn't be who I am without them. And I wanted to honour that. I wanted to show appreciation for the people in my life that have made me who I am. So we have power in our words, and I wanted to do that publicly, but maybe there's people in your life that you feel like you have the opportunity to appreciate that you haven't done so yet, and I would encourage you to do so. On the other side, on your right, my left, is something that sometimes I find really hard to talk about. At Bridge Builders, we help a lot of young people that are troubled, and the unfortunate truth is there are a lot of people that don't make it. A lot of young people that choose to exit this planet for whatever reason. And on that arm, I particularly wanted to honour the life of a person that had ended their life to suicide. So that's a list of people that I've basically personally known that that for whatever reason had taken their life. And that was incredible inspiration. As I was running, I was able to look down at my arm and remember people that had struggled, and remember people that had inspired me. And what I realised only this morning was that I had the power of life and death in my hands when I was running. And I felt that when I was out there. I was running in the Antarctic and I wanted to quit. Couldn't see the arms. And I realised that I literally held the power of life and death in my arms. And then the second thing that I realised is that I was the bridge between the two. Because I have become the person that helped me all those years ago. That entire list of people have helped me, and I've had the privilege, my life has been changed to the point where I have now the opportunity to be that for other people. But the amazing part about that is that we all have that ability. Every single one of us have an opportunity in our life to be that cheerleader, to be the person that says, I believe in you, to be the person that makes the difference between whether someone's here or someone's not here. And Scott said to me before I started today, says, just make sure you talk about your why, because what we do, landscaping's awesome, right? But why we do it is so much more important. And I could not have finished that race if it wasn't for that why. I couldn't have done it. I could not have endured what I did. Now, of course I smiled and I got to trip around the world and run marathons, but my why helped me make it. And your why will drive whatever you do in your life. And I'm so glad that there have been people that have come alongside me and said, we've got you. We're going to walk with you. For all the shit you give us, we're going to walk beside you and love you anyway. I was probably not the most well-behaved individual, but we can be a cheerleader for somebody. And our words are so important. I honestly believe that. My final thought I wanted to leave you with was actually from one of the other competitors, because we made a lot of history last week. The girl that won was the first woman to ever win it outright. Beat all the guys. No offense, fellas. But that's a pretty extraordinary feat. She ran an average of 3 hours and 24 minutes across those, including the one in Antarctica. Legend, right? One of the other girls, her name I cannot pronounce, she's from South Africa, and her name is, we called her Nontu. And she was the first African woman to do what we just did. History-making stuff. No one in her entire country as a woman had ever done that. And I saw her in pain all week, but the smile on her face was incontainable. She could not contain it because she knew what she was there to do. She's like, I'm making history here. I'm in pain, but I am finishing. And she wrote a Facebook status. I don't even know what time it is back home or where she is or whatever. She wrote it recently, and I took a picture of it, and I just wanted to read it to you because it's from an incredible person. It's only a couple of sentences, but she did a really great summary of our experience. And I said that to her. I said, you've just summarized what I feel because I can't put words to it yet. And she said this: of course it's been a tough 168 hours with only 3 showers. Flying and running is all we have been doing in the past 7 days. I'm sure we all don't know how we made it, but we are glad that we did. The eyes were holding back tears because it was maybe not the right place or the right time, or maybe because one had already run out of tears, as many have been shed. In pain as we might have been, but also our eyes were holding the dreams of so many. Because by being who we are, we inspire others to be. And that captivated me. By just being who we are, that inspires other people to be. And she was just herself. Nontu turned up, a crazy South African lady, and just ran around the planet and changed history just by being her. So my encouragement to you is just be you. You don't have to run around the planet like I did. If you want to, you can. Sign up tomorrow. Just be you. Just be the best version that you can be. And when you get there, keep getting better. And keep getting better and keep getting, because that's what I plan to do. I plan to just continue to be the best version of myself that I can be and inspire other people to do the same thing. So if you ask me why I'm crazy enough to do it, I just want to help people be better. And I think I run out of words for once. Crazy kids from back home, us celebrating an event. I just thought I'd end with that because that's why I'm here. Thank you so much for having me.
Wow.
Thank you.
So I've been hearing this for 3 days, and my eyes are leaking.
Do you have questions? Yes.
What are your aspirations for the future?
You know what? I turned up this week with not really much thought to that, and the first thing Scott says is write a book. So maybe that. Look, I'm not really wanting to go out and do this a second time anytime soon, but I do have a desire to improve my personal best in just one marathon, just one singular standalone. Get better at a marathon. I think running a marathon's an extraordinary bucket list for any human, but it's the process of training where I learn more about myself and the world around me. So I'm currently at around the 4 hours 4 mark in a marathon, and I'd like to get that down to 3:30. I'm planning on going to Berlin in September. In terms of career, I'm heading back to Australia in a couple of days to go back and see all the wonderful kids that I work with. And I will continue, I think, to be a youth worker forever in my heart and a day. But yeah, that's kind of my plan. Just keep helping people, keep working with kids, and keep hoping that they're going to stay on the planet. That's my calling. And then just keep running. I'm not going to stop running. I have to wait a while because my feet are a little wrecked. But yeah, and maybe writing a book about the experience. Like I said, that's like a tiny list in comparison to like a Teledex of memories that's flying around in my brain right now. So I'm going to have to take some considerable time to get that down and share that with people because I think that's important.
She kind of, go ahead.
Still black and blue and very painful, but I can walk, so that's a bonus. Unfortunately that really annoyed me. I was like, my body's failing me. Come on, get your stuff together. Because I really wanted to push myself. I think I pushed my toe beyond its limits, but it's getting better. It'll be fine. I don't have to amputate it anytime soon, so I'm excited that mission 10 toes and 10 fingers is accomplished. Yeah.
It's a little off topic, but how are you guys handling in Australia right now all the wildfires y'all been facing?
Yeah, you know what? I was on my socials yesterday and I saw an image pop up that says New South Wales has declared every fire contained, so that kind of made me super, super happy. When I left, there was still some significantly uncontained fires, but still burning in significant bushland, wasn't kind of threatening homes and people, which was amazing. And I was hoping that once I'd got back over the 3 weeks, the news would be really good news. So yeah, it's been a trying couple of months for our country. Most of the right-hand side of our country was on fire there for a couple of months, and there's been just some incredible stories of both tragedy and the Australian community coming together to help one another, and other countries getting involved. And yeah, I think we're really at the tail end of that now, and it's then going to be about restoration and rebuild. But yeah, perfect question, because I've been thinking about it the whole time I've been away.
Beck, the thing that resonated with me was when your mind had to triumph your body, when it wouldn't give out. So could you just talk a little bit about the training regimen, because I can't imagine what it would take to even get to this point. And then the follow-up question is, had the order been reversed, do you think you would have finished?
Oh, that's a good question. Wow. Question 1, training. Yeah, 2 years of doing what coach says. So I have a really great coach who sat with me, and we made a 2-year plan, a 6-month plan, and a 2-week plan. And I've been working very closely with him and a squad of runners. I've trained with some pretty elite people, and it was about creating a plan that was customized for me, that worked for me, which was really important. Making sure that I had the nutrition, like I think I've eaten my body weight in food in the last week, and then making sure that I was consistent enough. We were having a conversation about consistency the other night, and it was one of the things that really helped me, because I was really inconsistent when I started with my training, and I realized I wasn't going to make it if I didn't really get, a couple of really great disciplines under my belt. So my week was basically made up of 5 days on, 2 days off. So I did 1 training session on the track with a team, so that team environment was super helpful and encouraging. I did 2 shorter sessions, whether that was progressive or whatever. And then on the 2 days that I had off were Mondays and Fridays, and they weren't off, they were just not running. I did like strength-based training and just trying to build my body stronger, make sure that I had my core strength up and my flexibility and all that kind of stuff. And my biomechanics, I wasn't running well when I started, so we had to tweak a few things, get different shoes. And then the weekends I did 2 long runs and just progressively got longer and longer. And I probably, the miles K's conversion is still confusing me, but in K's I was probably doing 70, 90 K's a week consistently for a few months before I did this. It was all about learning how to back it up. Anyone can go out, well, I'm going to say that as nice as I can, anyone I think can actually go out and learn how to run a marathon. But it takes a lot to try and figure out how you can do 7 of them in a row. And the body really broke down over the week, and you noticed that. It got really tough, and you had to just find a way, and that's where the brain came in, and my mind found a way when my body said no. If the order was reversed...
It might be a little too raw to figure out.
Oh, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and say yes anyway, because my why was strong enough. Yeah. Even knowing what I know now, if Antarctic was the second last one, I keep thinking back to Linda in Perth, and I say out loud, if Linda wasn't there, I wouldn't have made it. But the truth is, I probably would have, because at some point, if I didn't have Linda, I would have found another way, because I was there for a reason. And I really feel like no matter what happened throughout that whole week, like we got a lot thrown at us. But the last 4 we ran within 15 hours each. Like that's not recovery after a marathon. There were times where I would sit on the plane and they'd serve up this amazing food, and I would just be so exhausted I didn't want to eat. I ran 2 marathons on no food. Couldn't eat. I just couldn't eat. And then you have to deal with your body breaking down and not having the fuel. And then I couldn't eat in the Antarctic because my fuel bar froze and the Coke froze. I was like, I got to stay warm. So, we had everything thrown at us, and the schedule wasn't working, and there were so many variables that we dealt with in that week. And I just think if it had been different, we would have just done the same thing. That's probably my only answer I got.
When you finally got to sleep, how long did you sleep?
So we finished at 12 in the middle of the day in Miami in South Beach. I went back to the hotel, chilled out, just chilled for hours. I probably got maybe 5 or 6 hours sleep that night, got up the next day and took a train to the East, guys. And then just normal sleep, really. It's luxury. I got about 20 to 22 hours in 7 days. So to sleep for 5 hours in one stint was like amazing. I'm finding myself wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning, like ready to go, because my body's like, you're done. You've had 4 hours. Like, let's go. Like, nope. Still trying to sleep. So I think my body's slowly, the guys at church on Sunday joked that I'm definitely not in the right household for carb recovery. Wrong place to go. They took me shopping, took care of me. But I've just been trying to eat a lot, rest a lot. Haven't really tackled a marathon again yet. Don't think I'll do that for a little while. But yeah, it's just about listening to my body and trying to figure out how to recover. Like they said, they expected me to turn up on a stretcher, and I was like, hey! So I probably thought I was going to be in worse shape, to be honest. I thought I was going to be absolutely wrecked, and I've just kind of gone back into a normal schedule for me, other than the fact I'm on the other side of the planet and it's kind of night at home. It's daytime here and I'm still recovering. Yeah. I still don't believe that I did that, by the way.
How many people started and how many finished?
Okay, so that's an interesting one. The coronavirus really affected us. It was not a good time to be doing global travel in the middle of a health emergency.
Wow.
Just one more thing we had to deal with. We had temperature checks off every flight to make sure that no one on our flight had been infected. People get a bit sensitive when there's a global emergency. Basically what happened was we had a field of 42 that got down to 35. Six people from China were declared not possible to go with us simply because of customs. So Australia and the US both declared the 14-day quarantine, which meant that even if the persons coming on our trip weren't infected, or they didn't think they were, they legally wouldn't be able to enter the US or Australia as part of the trip, and if they were with us, so would we. So that would have just thrown everything out. So one guy actually made the trip across to Cape Town, getting ready to start, and the race director said, I'm sorry mate, you've come from China, it's physically impossible for me to make this work. So 6 people will now do, the event's now going biannual, so 2022, those 6 people get the chance to come back and have the experience. But yeah, 35, so we had 12 females and 23 men. Still trying to do maths.
How many didn't get the last medals?
Yeah. So the guy who was winning, instead of 9, he ended up with 4 because he didn't finish the 5th, the 6th or the 7th, and then didn't get the 2 at the end. So that was a bit disappointing. 2 of the ladies started doing the full marathon, and in the Antarctic, they got to the halfway mark and said they were done. So then they transitioned across into half marathons for the rest of the time. There was one lady that did the half in the Antarctic, and the race director said to her, well, you can continue doing the full and not get recognised for the full, or you can go to the half and be recognised as a half. And she said, I'm going to run the full and you can recognise me as the half. Wow. So she went out and finished the full on every single marathon, even though it wasn't going to count. And I thought that was pretty extraordinary. And then there was 2 girls in the Antarctic that they got cold feet, literally like wet cold feet. They went inside, they dried their socks out, and they went back out and finished. They took 45 minutes in the middle of the Antarctic to dry their socks. One of the girls was actually convinced that she was going to not do it, which was Alicia, the one with the ankle problem. She dried her socks out. She said she spent 45 minutes inside. She'd prepared the speech to tell Richard, I'm done, I'm not finishing. She went outside to find Richard, couldn't find Richard, and thought I might as well start running. So I was like, you did what? Then she finished 1 lap behind us, and I was like, what are you doing? And then she went on to finish every single one of the other races. I remember saying to her in Miami, I was like, so let me just take you back to the Antarctic, and that little speech you had prepared. She was like, I know, what was I thinking? I was like, you were probably thinking you were gold. Like, just extraordinary story. So out of the 35, there's probably 30 of us that did the full thing and got all the medals and finished. But everyone finished. So one of the statistics I shared with Scott and Catherine was the guy on crutches, yeah, at the end. He went on crutches and he finished within 12 minutes of the deadline.
Wow.
Yeah. So if we had to
He was
spend
the
an
last
extra...
guy, so it was
he was the
12
last
minutes.
guy, yeah. So everyone made it that was out on course, and if we had have spent an extra 12 minutes on some other continent, there would have been a whole lot of people that didn't make it. So it tells you the timeline, right? We were under the pump. You know, I finished the Madrid within 2 minutes of the deadline, and that guy finished the final race within 12 minutes. So we are literally flying through airports, getting on planes and running, and that was it for 7 days. And I think Nontu said we had 3 showers. It was tough. It was a tough week, but I'm incredibly glad that I got the chance to do it, and some of the people that I got to run with were just next level. Like the girl that won. How do you do 7 marathons back to back in 3.5 hours, including the Antarctic. So she smashed the record. Now she's the new record holder. Amazing.
A lot of people have asked about the time, different time zones. And what Beck explained to us is when they started the first race, the director hits the stopwatch and a 168-hour countdown begins. And so it didn't matter what time zone, that local time just didn't matter. They were just about that 168 hours, and they went right up to 12 minutes before that 168 hours to do all that.
Yeah. Still sinking in.
Customs, flying, they had all that stuff.
Yeah. There was one plane ride that we tried to take out of Dubai, and they call it fuel critical, so it just means that the distance you have to fly and the fuel capacity you have are quite similar, so you have to make sure you fuel tank when you go. And they had us fueled up on the runway waiting, and they couldn't fit us into because we're a chartered plane, so we're not like a normal commercial thing where everything's scheduled, right? We'd already taken too long, blah, blah, blah. So they tried to fit us into this schedule, and we're sitting on the tarmac for half an hour. There goes half an hour that we kind of needed. And then the captain says to us, we're doing a fuel critical fly, so we can't leave now because we have less fuel because we've been sitting on the tarmac for half an hour. Took us back to the terminal. We all sat on the terminal for another 45 minutes. Hour and 15 minutes just got wasted, and then put us back out on the tarmac, and then we flew. So we busted an hour and 15 minutes sitting around waiting for refuel and other planes.
So here's a detail you don't think of. They couldn't, the time to fly mattered, the time to run mattered, the time to sleep matters, right? If you're sitting on the tarmac, you can't sleep. Because remember, on an airplane, you're going to be sitting straight up. Seats are straight up. You're buckled in. Yeah. It's not till you get up to up past 15,000 feet or something that they say you can lean back. You can take the seat belt, loosen it up. So an hour and 15 minutes gone of sleep that they lost.
Yeah. And the reason why I said 20 to 22 hours of sleep is everyone thinks we've got so much flight time. We had 63 hours and 15 minutes of flight time. You can sleep all that time. No, you can't. We had an 18-hour flight from Cape Town to Perth. We had to go from Perth to Mauritius to Jakarta, and Jakarta to Perth. So all of the takeoff and the landing, you lose 4, 5 hours, 6 hours of sit up, put your seatbelt on. They were waking us up. We're asleep on the plane, and they're like, "You got to wake up."
Just to stop.
Like, oh my goodness, you don't understand.
Fuel. They have enough fuel to get, to go direct.
Yeah, exactly.
So she also, go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to ask if you traveled with medical staff, and were you able to get IVs and things that you might need through the process?
So we had as well as the 35 competitors, we had a support crew of about 10 or 12 people, some videographers, photographers, race directors, and a full-blown doctor, effectively. He was the one medicating my toe. But what he did say to us is that he has all the IV lines and everything, but if he's hooking us up to an IV line, then we should be dying. So we kind of didn't utilize that skill because, there's only so much resources you can have on a tin can plane. He was there and he was definitely utilized. He was fixing my toe. There was plenty of other things he was dealing with. But that kind of expertise was there should we needed it. Yeah, so we felt very much taken care of, and they did, within the limits that they had, they did try and provide the best experience possible along the way. So they fed us really well, like there was always food available, and they tried to take care of us, which we felt really supported in that, so that was good.
She glossed over the 3 showers. There were times that wasn't even an option, and then you think, well, I asked her, so where did you dry out your clothes?
I did a lot of washing at their house.
So she literally, you ran with wet clothes.
Yeah. Sometimes you couldn't
start
do
a race
anything.
with wet clothes. I can't,
So they got us changed for the races before we got off the plane, so we go through the airport ready to race. And then when we finished in the Antarctic, no showers were available. When we flew through Cape Town, no showers were available. So it wasn't until we kind of got to Perth that was an option. And that whole time we just had whatever gear we had. So I raced probably 4 races in like reused clothes after not showering. We all smelled amazing. I mean, it was great. A lot of, like can in a shower, But, that's what we did. You just knew that was what it was going to be like going into it, and you just kind of made it work. So,
So when we first started talking, I said, "You've got to come and talk." We have a regular P&L meeting, today at 3. Talk to the P&L guys for 10 minutes, and we talked some more. So, well, maybe 15 minutes and then talk some more. And I'm thinking, not just the P&L guys, we need everybody in the team here. And called Tom and I said, I know we've got an agenda, but man, we've got something pretty special, an opportunity here. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
So I see many of you have been taking notes. I hope there's some takeaways,
Yeah.
you know, like it's, remember we say, we tell Ted all the time, we don't need just information that's interesting. We need information, you know, that's important, you know. And so don't let this just be interesting, you know. What I hope there's takeaways for every one of us. Anything else you want to ask or say? Or
Beck, I'd just like to say this. First, it's been an honor to have you here. And as you reflect through this process, which I'm sure there'll be a lot to reflect upon, I've had the honor to hear hundreds of speakers in my life on a variety of different subjects. You are a gifted orator and storyteller, and
Wow.
it gifted,
Wow.
and it's been a privilege to hear you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate that.
You may listen. We didn't bring us all together for the sake of a fundraiser. However, she is raising funds, and Catherine and I are going to be giving. And if you care to do something, and you want to slip it into an envelope anonymously, you know, I don't want to know, but it would be Bridge Builders. Is that?
Just beckmitchell.com.
Oh, okay.
It's just mine. Yeah, I set it all up for the
beckmitchell.com.
campaign. But I can give that to you and you can share it with
Okay,
the guys.
if you want to do that, there's zero pressure. I'm just really grateful that she agreed to speak with us today. Thank you all for your time, and these chairs have gotten exceedingly hard in the last hour. So with that, one more round of applause.